I grabbed two 8-inch diameter cardboard tubes from my local store and cut them into 4 pieces using a utility knife, each about 14 inches tall. Then I placed 2 of them side by side on a piece of 3/4 inch plywood and traced around the outer edges, connecting the circles. I used a jigsaw to cut the shape out. You'll need 4 of these plywood pieces in total, plus these 2x4s cut to 14 inches tall. Stack 2 of the plywood pieces together, align them, and drill a hole through the center of each circle. Also, pre-drill holes on the either ends of the 2x4s. Next, attach a 2x4 at the center of each circle using recessed screws. Place the cardboard tubes through each 2x4 and align them. Apply construction adhesive to bond them together. Once it's glued, add another plywood piece on top, aligning the edges of the cardboard and securing it to the 2x4 with screws. Now the base structure is ready. I got this fluted pole wrap sheet. I cut them to the height of my base. I applied construction adhesive around the sides and carefully wrapped the sheet, securing it with pin nails. I continued to wrap the base with the fluted sheet until it was fully covered all around. The first base is ready, and I repeated the same process to build another one. For the tabletop, I picked a red oak board from my local store. Next, I marked the center of the board. Using this point as a pivot, I cut a semicircle on one end of the top with a jigsaw and a simple guide. You could also use a circle cutting jig with a router. I cut the semicircle shape on both the ends of the 54-inch long tabletop. Next, I rounded the edges of the top and sanded them smooth. To finish, I used this 2-part wood bleach to tone down the pinkish hue on the red oak by following the product's instructions. Once dry, I gave the top and the base a final sanding with 220 grit sandpaper and applied clear polyacrylic sealer. I flipped the tabletop upside down, installed mounting hardware to the bases, and secured them to the top. And that's it! A beautiful, designer-inspired coffee table made with just a few materials. Looks high-end, costs way less, and it's totally DIY-able.
What I love about this project is that it's budget friendly. We're starting with a toilet paper roll. All right, so we are going to start with our toilet paper roll, and we are going to cut it down to about half this size. So I'm going to use some scissors. So now that we've cut our toilet paper roll in half, I'm going to be using this side here. We're going to set this aside for now because we're going to move on to the next step. So I'm going to be taking an X-Acto blade, and I essentially want to create like a flat piece because this is going to be sitting on the ground and I don't want it to be unstable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my X-Acto blade and I'm going to extend it out, and I'm going to kind of start shaving part of this piece away. Okay, so now that this is able to stand on its own, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be attaching my toilet paper roll to the top. I want it to be directly over the base, so we want it to sit about right here. So I'm going to start by taking my glue and I'm going to go around the inside. And I want it to kind of fall here. And I'm going to take my hot glue and kind of go around to the outside. And so I'm just going to continue to add glue around the surface, basically kind of completing the gap that I see in between the toilet paper roll and the foam round. All right, so now that this has been glued, I am still waiting for glue to dry a little bit, but we can start at the bottom of this and work our way up. So it should be set by the time we reach the top. Now I'm going to use an artist palette knife. I have kind of more of a wide spatula-esque one. But yeah, this is what I'm going to be using. So if we open it up, you can see it's pink. So I'm going to take a big heap of this and we're going to just start layering it on. And ultimately what I'm trying to create is a really solid surface. And I want to try and make the surfaces relatively even. But you don't need it to be perfect because we're going to be doing another step after this that's going to help kind of smooth the surface out. Once I've completed this, When we get a little further into this step, I'll walk you through some other pieces, especially when we come up here. But for now, we will just keep moving and I'll see you on the next step. So now we're at a point where we want to work our way towards the toilet paper roll. That's definitely a little more set. So it's kind of tricky. You're definitely going to get your hands covered in spackle. So don't worry, nothing bad's going to happen with spackle on your hands. But if you choose to do this with gloves, it makes sense. Now that this is dried a little bit, it's not fully dry, as you can see, it's still relatively pink. We can start tackling the top part of this. So we're going to do essentially the same thing, but I'm going to start by going over the exposed base of the toilet paper roll. So you can see I'm kind of covering it there. We want this to look kind of blended. We want it to look pretty seamless. And like I said earlier, it does not need to be perfect. We are going to be doing another step once this is all dry to really even out the surface and make it look really nice. So I let this dry for about 24 hours, and as you can see, it is completely white now. It's no longer pink. And we did the inside just so it looked pretty complete when you were looking at it from afar, or when you're looking at it closely. I just wanted it to look very cohesive and nice. So what I'm going to do now is I have a sanding block that I've already used. So the sanding block is a little dull, so I'm going to be using some 220 grit sandpaper. I'm going to wind it around the block. All right, now that we've sanded this down, we're going to wipe it off, and then we are going to take it outside and move on to our next step, which will be spray painting it. So here is the finished product of this high-end modern donut vase dupe, and I really love how it turned out. I think it looks great in my office, and I hope you feel inspired to try this project.
So I headed to my craft store and I picked up some air-dried clay to begin, and I took 1/2 and rolled it into a hot dog shape that was about 10 to 12 inches in length. I then took the other piece and rolled it out as well so that it matched my first piece, so another hot dog shape that was 10 to 12 inches in length. I folded it into a U shape, and then I took my thumbs and pressed into the ends to make my handle for my lamp. You want to make these pieces as flat as possible so they can be easily glued onto your lamp. And then I repeated the exact same process with my other handle. This is my thrifted lamp here. I picked it up at my local thrift store for about $8. And I'm just going to remove the shade so that we can place our handles where they're going to go and size them up before adding our glue. So I'm going to place it onto the side of my lamp, and then I'm just again going to press the clay out to make it as flat as I possibly can so that it looks blended into the lamp. I'm going to remove my handles, and this is air dry clay, so I'm going to let them dry for at least 24 hours. Once dry, I'm going to come in with some contact cement, place it on the back of the handle, and then I'm going to push this up against my lamp. So I'm going to do one handle at a time, pushing it into place. I am going to have to hold it here for just a minute or so just to let the glue stick a little bit so that it doesn't slide. I'm going to let this set for at least 12 hours before painting. To paint my lamp, I'm going to use some plain acrylic craft paint black, and I'm going to mix in equal amounts of baking soda. And I'm just going to mix it around with my paintbrush, making sure that it's mixed fully in and there are no large clumps of baking soda. Then I'm going to take this mixture and I'm going to just paint all over my lamp using a cross-hatch painting technique, so going back and forth with my brush. I'm going to make sure I paint all the way up to the top, and then as well the base of my lamp too. For the handles, I'm going to come in with a smaller, more defined brush and paint all those as well with the baking soda and black paint mixture. I did 2 full coats and let it dry overnight. I replaced my shade, and then I could set my lamp up in my home. I am so happy with how this Anthropologie dupe turned out, and what's even better is the amount of money I saved. I really hope that you enjoyed this project, and I hope that it inspires you to get creative with larger ticketed items to see if you can make your own.